Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's extension of the news vendor model that we talked about last time. This week, we'll specifically be talking about managerial levers that you can pull to improve profitability in supply chains. There are four things that the textbook has, and these are the four things that we'll talk about. We have improved forecasting, quick response, postponement, and tailored sourcing. Now, apart from these, there are some obvious actions that you can do, which is increase the salvage value of each unit. So if you can make more post-season, then you'll definitely improve supply chain profitability. And of course, decrease the margin loss from a stock out. Obviously, those are some very obvious things that you can do to improve supply chain profitability. But these are four other things, there are four other levers that you can pull to improve supply chain profitability. And in this video specifically, we'll be talking about improved forecasting. How does improved forecasting affect supply chain profitability? How does that, and what can we do about that, right? So, so one of the things you would have noticed in the way the formulas are written out is the cycle service level and the ratio of overstocking and understocking costs have this sort of inverse relationship. So what this does tell us is that if you are somehow able to affect one, then you're sort of affecting the other, right? And how does that happen exactly? So let's look at one way, which is improving forecast. So what improved forecasts essentially do is they reduce the uncertainty of the forecast. So by reducing uncertainty, you could say you're either reducing the levels of you're reducing the variance in the demand that you face. So what that does is it reduces the safety inventory that you have to hold. It increases the product availability and for the same level of safety inventory, or it can potentially do both. So it can either lower the levels of safety inventory or increase product availability or do both. And in the example that we'll see, you'll notice that it actually ends up doing both of those things, right? So let's talk about improved forecast. So if demand is 350 and standard deviation is 150 for this particular item that you're looking at, let's say that we are selling shawls, cashmere shawls. They are sold for $250 a piece. The cost of making them is $100, and if you cannot sell them for the season, you'll have to salvage it for $80. So with this, we can calculate the cycle service level by calculating the cost of understocking and calculating the cost of overstocking, right? And the cycle service level will turn out to be 0.88. So it's not exactly 0.88, it has more decimals, but we can round it off to 0.88. Now, at this point, if demand was 350 and standard deviation of demand is 150, then the expected profit will be $47,469 and the optimal order quantity will be 526. Now, improving forecast essentially means that you're reducing the variability of demand. By reducing variability of demand, you're essentially reducing the standard deviation of demand. Now, in this case, we will assume that the average demand stays the same, but it's the standard deviation that reduces. But sometimes improving forecast could also mean that you're changing the mean of the demand also. But in this case, all we're doing is just looking at changing standard deviations, right? And we are basing everything off of that. So what we'll do is, let me quickly open up the file that we've been using recently. So the reason I opened up this file, so this is the file that I created for our synchronous session. The reason I opened up this file is you'll notice that the formulas for expected profit, expected overstock, understock, they're all in here. These are pretty complicated formulas that I don't want to keep typing in again and again. That's why I have these formulas here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy my formulas over into this new file that I have here, right? So I'll say sigma is 150. So sigma is the standard deviation. So you'll notice that in this case, what we're trying to do is we're trying to see what happens when the standard deviation changes and all the things that that go with that. So let me close this. We're not saying anything here. So if you look at the data that we have, in the data that we have, demand is 350, standard deviation is 150, sales price is 250, cost is 100, and salvage value is $80, right? So you'll notice that cycle service level was 0.8824. So I'm going to say sigma is 250 by 150. By that I mean that the standard deviation is 150. We look at varying values of standard deviation, right? Okay. Right. So you will notice that with that, the optimal order quantity is 528 units, and the expected profit is $47,469.82. Now, what this does is you can also notice that given that the cost of understocking is so much higher than the cost of overstocking, you are definitely going to overstock as opposed to understock, right? And so that's what you have here, and that is the expected profit. Now, what if the standard deviation reduces? So I'm going to do multiple cases here. So let me just copy this over multiple times. So the multiple cases that I am doing are essentially reducing the standard deviation. So what if the standard deviation was 120? So if the standard deviation is 120, you'll notice that everything up to this point stays the same except the value of standard deviation, obviously. But the cycle service level stays the same. But even though the cycle service level stays the same, because my standard deviation is reduced, I'm going to order fewer units. So here I ordered way more units, 528. That is why I had a huge overstock. Now I'm going to order fewer units. My overstock is reduced, but my profit has gone up, as you can see. So as the standard deviation reduces, we have a better idea of what our demand is. And because we have a better idea of what our demand is, we can order fewer items and still manage to satisfy most of our customers, right? So what you're saying here is, if you remember, cycle service level, the definition of cycle service level is that it is the probability that you'll be able to satisfy customer demand. So what you're saying with reduction in standard deviation or reduction in or better forecasts is that you're able to satisfy the same level of customer demand but with fewer items. And as you'll notice that as the standard deviation keeps on reducing, let's say that becomes 90, now you'll order even fewer items but profit goes up. You'll notice that the overstock also keeps going down because you have a better idea of what demand is. Everything is tighter, so you're ordering fewer items, but you're able to satisfy demand at the have a cycle service level at the same rate, right? So if it goes down to 60, right, then again it goes down further. Profit increases. If it goes down even further to 30, again optimal order quantity decreases. Cycle service level remains the same. Expected profit also goes up, and you'll notice that the amount of overstock is way lower because standard deviation being 30 is very, very precise. You're essentially saying that you have very little variation in demand, right? So these are the different values that we're looking at: 60, 30, and let's look at one absurd example at the end. So I'm calling it absurd in the sense that in most real life cases, sigma will never be zero. Sigma being zero means that you have absolutely no variation in demand, which means that you know that demand is exactly 350 units. So standard deviation is zero. Now a lot of these formulas end up going haywire, so that's why I'm just going to use a very, very, very small value like 0.0001, right? it's a very, very small value. That's because standard deviation being 0 throws a lot of these formulas off. So it being very, very small essentially means that standard deviation is 0. So your expected profit is 52,500 because you know that demand is exactly 350 units. You will order exactly 350 units. It makes no sense for you to order any other items because you know that there is no variation in demand and demand is exactly 350. You'll order 350 units. You will not have no understock, you'll have no overstock, no cost of understocking, overstocking, and that's the amount of profit you are going to make because you know demand is exactly 350. You will make $150 profit on each of them. So it's $150 times 350, which is 52,500, right? So that's the absurd case. So don't worry about that. But what I want you to notice is that the order quantity decreases and it decreases pretty significantly, but your profit increases, right? And the overstock values also go down, and you're definitely more likely and the understock values also go down, and you're definitely more likely to overstock than understock because cost of overstocking is way, way lower than the cost of understocking, right? And this is the first thing that you can do. If you can improve demand, you can increase profitability by ordering fewer items so that you're able to match customer demand in a better way, right? So that was the first lever. So improving forecast, right? So the impact of improving forecast, you will notice that as the standard deviation of forecast error increases, the expected understock will increase, expected overstock will increase, and expected profit will decrease, right? And that's precisely what we saw. So that's the first level. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about quick response and the ideas behind quick response. But for that, I'll see you in the next video. Right? Take care.